El Chapo has been found guilty on all counts. So we're gonna do a little bit of TYT true crime. I know I personally like diving into the specifics of all of these true crime cases. So going over, now that it is finished, the El Chapo trial and pouring over all the details and the specific things that you can just look at and be wowed by the scope of them, I think we should take time to do. So he was found guilty on all 10 charges, all 10 counts. He will be sentenced on June 25th, and prosecutors are gonna look for life without parole. There were 200 hours of testimony pouring over all kinds of stuff. Just the sheer volume of what El Chapo was able to do and has been found guilty of doing. For example, Assistant US Attorney Adam Fels said in his opening argument that El Chapo had sent more than a line of cocaine for every single person in the United States in just 4 shipments of cocaine.
Man,
that is
since most Americans don't do cocaine, the Americans that do cocaine apparently do a lot of it.
Yeah, but they get so interesting after. He was convicted of smuggling hundreds of tons of cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, and marijuana. This is someone who, when you go through the details of it, he escaped from jail twice.
That's crazy.
And we'll get into the specifics of that, I want to. But there were hundreds of acts of violence that they detailed during the process of trying this case, including a trusted hitman of El Chapo kept a quote murder room in his mansion on the US border, which featured a drain on the floor to more easily clean up after slayings. This was not the only murder room in the trial. There were soundproof murder rooms that, to have it in his mansion, the hitman had it. So it's like, all right, kids, keep watching Dora the Explorer. I'm gonna go downstairs and murder someone in my custom built, like I'd like to see the HGTV show about that.
You know, I always wondered why Scott Pruitt got that soundproof booth in his office. He didn't kill anyone. He didn't kill anyone.
He kind of did. If you think about the EPA and how you're poisoning people by getting rid of regulations.
He didn't kill anyone, we're not saying he killed anyone.
Other examples, there was one person who had burns made with an iron on his back. His shirt was stuck to his skin. He had burns made with a cigar lighter all over his body. His feet were burned. That specific individual was locked up for days and then shot and buried alive. There were 2 other guys that were beaten for hours with a stick, and then after they were killed, thrown onto a bonfire. This is very intense stuff. That is on the side of it that is gross violence. Just John's face alone during all of this.
It's disgusting, yeah.
Do you like true crime, John?
I don't really follow true crime, no.
You don't, Cenk?
No. I like false crime.
False crime.
It doesn't really happen, so nobody gets hurt.
Yeah.
Fake crime.
This has happened. On the corruption tip, there were apparently, according to these allegations, he has been found guilty of $50 million bribe fund just sitting around. Alex Cienfuentes, yeah.
That sounds like what Big Pharma has, except in America we legalized it.
Yeah.
Okay, and drugs from one side, drugs from another side. I'm not saying anything. At least they don't have the murder rooms.
And Brett, it's technically a lobbying fund.
It's a lobbying fund.
That's right.
Well, here is one instance that one witness said it was used. His fund to pay for. Cienfuentes, Alex Cienfuentes, a Colombian drug lord, claims that former Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto, who served from 2012 to 2018, accepted a $100 million bribe from El Chapo. There is no response officially from Peña Nieto's office.
Yeah, you would think you would want to deny that. Okay, but if he did, at least he got a good number. That's a big number. If you're gonna take a bribe, take a $100 million one.
$100 million. An idea of the extravagance that El Chapo lived with. He had a diamond encrusted pistol that was shown, and it had his initials on it. Mr. Martinez, who was one of the people, told the court that Guzman was so wealthy he had a private zoo on top of his numerous properties, including a $10 million or 8 million pound beach house, as well as a yacht he named after himself, El Chapito, which means the little one.
But the yacht, ironically, not so little. Yeah. And the zoo had a tunnel so that the animals could escape.
There were some crazy stories. Multiple times when his compounds were raided, he was naked with the mistress and had to run out of the window. And in one time, he had to use an escape tunnel under his bathroom. But there was one instance where he just had to run out of his house naked with his mistress at night.
So we'll get to how he was caught, which is awesome. But with these drug lords, I mean, I get that they were born into poverty, etc. So what were their opportunities? I mean, I'm not trying to lib out on that. This guy's a terrible guy. I'm super glad he's brought to justice. But my point is a different and weird one, which is, yeah, but I mean, if you've got to sneak out of the house naked with your mistress every once in a while and crawl out of tunnels, are you having fun? Like, is the zoo worth it? Why don't you just visit a zoo and not be a drug lord and not deal with all that stress? I mean, maybe that's why I'm not meant to be a gangster. I don't know.
How much of it is like, well, I'm a drug lord, so I guess I have to let's brainstorm some weird stuff for me to buy.
Probably.
Yeah, because you've got billions of dollars, and that goes to another tangent here, which is nobody needs that kind of money, and you literally the people who have it literally don't know what to do with it. They're like, I don't know, should we build a zoo on top of a zoo, on top of a beach house?
Yeah.
Right? Because we don't know what to do with the money.
Yeah, I've thought about that recently. I don't know if this makes any sense or how you would do it, if it does make sense, but I wish there was a way of investigating and quantifying, like, of the richest people, billionaires or whatever, how much of their wealth matters at all to them. Because we know that it matters in terms of it drives every action that they make in business and in politics and all of that. But does it actually make any difference whatsoever in your life?
Other than ego, after a certain point, we talked a lot about this in the post games. I'll do it again. TYT.com/join. Join us in the post game. We'll talk about how Italian John is, and a funny story about Bernie Sanders that we mentioned earlier at an Italian restaurant. Anyway, and we'll talk about what the number is. After that number, I don't think you need $1 more, and the rest of it is all ego. Okay?
$25,000.
It's probably a little higher than that. TYT.com/join. Okay, now more on Guzman. Look, so he's guilty and he's gonna serve life sentence, and he probably will not be able to. Could you imagine if he breaks out of Supermax in America?
Hold on a second, because I feel like we glossed over that. He's escaped twice from prisons. Okay, he escapes the first time. The second time, when your supervisor comes and you're like, yeah, he got away. You can't be like, I couldn't see it coming.
Well, here's the story about that. The first time he escaped by getting a laundry cart. That was the story. The second time, he was in a more maximum security prison, and his family members and someone that he worked with, his associate, bought the land next to the prison and proceeded to tunnel under the prison. And one detail that came out during this whole court case was El Chapo had to tell them, like, dude, they can hear you when you're tunneling. It was that loud that reportedly, according to what happened during the trial, El Chapo could hear the tunneling from his cell and had to tell him, like, dude, you gotta keep this down.
Yeah, there might have been, that might have been one of the times they might have used that $50 million bribe fund.
Yes,
of course.
Yeah, that's true.
And so that will be, let's say, harder to do in America. So he's gonna go to prison for the rest of his life, and that's a great thing. But he's not the most guilty. The most guilty is the war on drugs in the first place, because who's buying all that cocaine? We are, and there's demand for it, whether it's cocaine, it's marijuana, etc. We made it illegal, and it has not stopped drug usage at all. All it did was create these insane gangs that have murder rooms. It's what prohibition does every single time. It happened when we did prohibition on alcohol. It created monstrous gangs, Al Capone and the rest. And now we do prohibition on marijuana, it creates monstrous gangs. And then we go, oh my God, golly gee, look at how bad these guys are. Of course, that's what happens when you do prohibition. So we should put the war on drugs on trial just as much as we put El Chapo on trial.
I like that.
When you say that he's not as guilty, maybe you just want to see what kind of a father he was.
Oh no.
Despite all this, he was a loving father. Here is one of my favorite bits. In a text sent to the twins, on the twins' 6-month birthday, the New York Daily News reported, he said, "Our daughter is fearless. I'm going to give her an AK-47 so she can hang with me." That is a father that is empowering his young daughter. He is not shopping in the pink aisle.
Yeah. But again, are you really having fun if your daughter has to be holding an AK-47 to be safe to hang with you?
Yeah.
Like, what did she do that made El Chapo go, that one, this one, not the other twin. That one gets the AK. This one, I don't care.
And machete,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, like you guys are pointing out, to be fair, he is defying gender stereotypes.
It's progressive.
That's true.
Right, but so now let's get to how he got caught. Same way that Richard Nixon did. And so, and every once in a while there's talk of Trump referencing tapes. Oh, please let him make that same stupid mistake they all make. So El Chapo started wiretapping his mistresses and his family and his associates because he wanted to see what they were saying. You know, in a sense, I get it, right? It's somewhat logical. That's why the government does it, because it gives you a lot of power. And if you're, again, the head of a giant drug cartel, you have less, issues with people's privacy, right? Like, what? I wiretapped you. You're lucky you're not in my murder room. What do you mean, right? But the guy doing the wiretapping flipped on him and gave the info to the FBI, and then boom, he's in a tunnel and he's gone. And El Chapo didn't see him again until he showed up at trial.
I cannot wait, because he ordered his death. He ordered his death. They were looking for him.
Of course he did. If anybody was gonna go in a murder room, it was the guy who gave all of the evidence to the FBI, right? So thank God El Chapo never got him. The FBI did a great job in protecting him and then bringing Guzman to justice. So it's a great day in America.
Yeah. One little detail of this entire El Chapo trial and conviction is the detail that it seems from all we learned, the ways that El Chapo was smuggling things into the United States, I hate to bring it back to Trump, but would not be stopped by a wall. He smuggled things largely through tunnels and legal ports of entry. He would smuggle things in like fake jalapenos and fake plastic bananas, and some of those images of the ways that he smuggled things through legal ports of entry, kind of separating them in different shipments and sending them through vans and trucks and boats. There was one boat that he sunk because he was like, I think they're onto us, and there was something like 4 tons of cocaine in there.
Oh, wow.
That was another detail that I have been way too obsessed with.
He smuggled it in through fake products, fake bananas, and fake news. So think about it for a second. The right-wing mythology that Steve King laid out, Republican from Iowa, was the dreamers who were actually brought here by their parents when they were kids. No, some of them are drug smugglers who have cantaloupe calves because they're dragging all this giant bags of marijuana across the border. Now, do you think that that's how drug gangs are actually gonna bring it, which is wildly inefficient? Or they're gonna sneak it in mass, like for example, 4 tons in a submarine. They're not gonna drag 4 tons across the border with individual people carrying it in loaves and in buckets. That's like, so stupid.
Not to belittle cantaloupe calves, but I don't think they can carry 4 tons across the border, even if you did have cantaloupe calves.
You couldn't carry that if you had submarine calves. On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.